Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Well, hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Annette, Franz, who is the founder and CEO of CX Journey, Inc. Annette, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Mike. Happy Friday.
Yes, we are chatting here on Friday, and it's amazing how time just flies. It seems to be Friday. Then all of a sudden it'll be end of the year. Oh my word! So you got to maximize the moment, and stop and smell the roses, and capitalize on everything. All those kind of cliche things, but it really is something that I find myself when we when you have like a 20-minute block of time, you're like, okay, what can I get done? What can I get done? So time just goes. Hey, give us a little bit of background on yourself and what is the CX Journey?
Absolutely. Okay, so where shall I begin? This could be a long story or a short thing. When we get to our age, we kind of we're like, wow, how do I keep this short and sweet?
Back when.
Right? All right. Well, I'll give you the short version of the long story. How does that sound? So I am CEO and founder of CX Journey, Inc. It is a customer experience consulting firm that I started actually just 3 years ago, but I've been in this customer experience space for the last 28 years. I started at J.D. Power and Associates back in the early 90s, and back then we didn't even call it customer experience. We called it customer satisfaction and customer loyalty. And so I've really watched sort of the evolution of all of that to where it has ended up today, and it's been an interesting ride for sure. I've spent a lot of time on the technology, on the software side, VOC platforms and vendors running their consulting services organizations, and ultimately that led me to where I am today. And I love having my own business and doing the things and working on the projects and working with the clients that I love working with. So.
Yeah, like the thought leadership. It's kind of interesting because you think about if you were a bricklayer, at some point your back gives out, your knees gives out because you are doing manual labor. But thought leadership and using your intellectual property, you can extend the life of how long you can contribute in working for quite a long time. So that is beautiful because many times, yes, you might have to keynote and go places, but many times you are just working with the client virtually on the phone, on the computer, and you don't have to be doing that manual labor. So I think that's just such a beautiful model.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. And I grew up on a farm in Ohio, so I'm all about manual labor.
Yeah,
glad I don't have to do that every day now.
Well, it's interesting. One of my daughters turns 18 next month, and about 4 or 5 months ago, we were talking about, college major and English major and editor and proofreader. I was like, you know what? We ought to get you set up on one of these, gig freelancer websites and just kind of offer up some proofreading, kind of stuff. And she told me just the other day, just in the last few months, I think she's earned up close to $600. And I remember have her sitting there on the couch, and I'm like, isn't that amazing? You just made whatever it was, sitting there in your PJs on the couch, using your brain. And I think that's so beautiful. So let's turn into customer experience. I think that sounds, in one sense, really, really new. People don't really know what it is. But in another sense, some people might think, oh, yeah, I know what that is, but then they don't. Right. So give us the unveil what really is customer experience.
I love it. So it's really interesting because I start all of my presentations with this because I want everybody to know what customer experience is, right? Because to your point, they think they know, but they confuse two terms, and I'll talk about that in just a second, or what those two terms are. But so customer experience, the way that I define it, is the sum of all the interactions that a customer has with a brand over the life of that relationship with the brand. But more importantly, the emotions, the feelings, and the perceptions that the customer has about those interactions. Okay. And it does get confused a lot with another term, customer service, and they are two completely different things. Customer service is actually one of those interactions that I just mentioned in the definition. And, customer experience is really very proactive in designing an experience, for our customers, and whereas customer service is really reactive. So if something goes wrong, we got to fix it. And my friend Chris Zane from Zane Cycles in Connecticut defines it. I've sort of adapted or modified his definition, but he says something along the lines of service is what happens when the experience breaks down.
Yeah. Hey, so how does that relate to the buyer's journey?
So interesting. The buyer journey is really sort of a marketing way of looking at it. It's a very sort of high level, the funnel and all of that. But customer experience is a lot more detailed. We take a look at the details and the things that break down and the things that are going well, and very much design what ultimately will become the buyer's journey as well. But buyer's journey is more of a sort of a marketing term. It's very high level, that whole lead gen funnel and everything.
And I think that you said something just a second ago that would tie in really well with that it's not just the steps or the process, it's what the prospect feels going through it. So it's kind of like UX, user experience. So the buyer's journey, whatever you want to call it, but still everybody that buys our product or service goes through some type of buyer's journey, unless it's like a pack of gum. You just reach out and you get it. But if it's a car, a house, a consulting service, they're going to go, even consciously or subconsciously, I don't trust this person, and they're kind of Googling around like, okay, well, I see that they've got some reviews and they've been featured on, okay, good, let me look a little further. And then when I talk to them, they seem like they're pretty, transparent and authentic. Okay, that's good. And the buyer's journey are the certain steps. But to your point, it's like how they feel. It reminds me of Maya Angelou's quote, people will forget what you say, but they'll never forget how you make them feel.
Exactly.
So talk a little bit about the feeling through that process and what that really means when you work with your clients.
Yeah, and that's I like that you brought that up, because one of the things that I do when I'm working with my clients is something called customer journey mapping, and we do it for employees as well. But journey mapping is really a way for us to walk in our customer's shoes step by step by step, from the point that so let's take, for example, a customer service interaction, or you're buying something, online, or even going to the store to buy it or whatever. Take the customer service example, right? Something broke down, or I have a question. So I have this need to call service, and you go step by step by step. I had the issue. I went on the website, tried to find the answer there. Couldn't, search for a phone number, called, went through their IVR, at that level of detail, step by step by step, And when we do that journey mapping workshop and the journey mapping work, the three things that we capture in that map, and I'll get back to answering your question about feelings with this, is the three things that we capture are what the customer is doing, what the customer is thinking, and what the customer is feeling at every step along the way. And so for every step that we capture of what the customer is doing, we capture what the customer is thinking. So what is the customer's need at that particular step, right? And then we capture what the customer is feeling. So how did we make the customer feel at that step? And the reason it's so important is that is one of the ways that we can really identify where things are going well and where things aren't, right? If obviously, if the customer feels great about the interaction and everything is positive, right, they're going to continue on. But if they're frustrated or they're upset, there's a likelihood that the customer will not ever do business with you again. They won't finish that transaction. They won't finish that phone call, and they're going to go tell their friends, right, versus, and the whole world on social media. And so the emotions is really an important part of the experience, because it really is a driver of whether you'll continue to do business with that brand or not.
Yeah. And
when brands, Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, when people feel like brands don't care about them and we're just a number and we're taken advantage of, or, sort of have that feelings along those lines, then we don't want to do business with brands either. So
yes, I literally was getting ready to say something, and when you said that, it just ties right in, and it's almost like you at ESPN, you knew what I was going to say.
Yes.
I was going to say, you need to think about the word brand and your brand as the brand that has personality, and it's got your brand should have personal touches and flares to it, so that they view, it's the brand and it's trustworthy, but what's that personality of the brand? And then that ties right in with what you were just saying there.
Absolutely. Yep. Great point.
So what's the first step if a company is thinking CX? What should be a flag of opportunity for them to go, well, you know what? In our business, I wonder if that could be polished up and enhanced. What should they look for?
Yeah. You know what? It's pain points, right? When you start losing customers, that's a pain point. And that's when typically when they come to me and say, hey, Annette, we need help, right, is because they're losing customers. And that means we're losing money and we're losing a lot of other things too. And so we want to identify why that's happening. And so, yeah, that's probably typically what I say to my clients is what is the pain point? What is the thing that's happening in your business today that is really, it's causing pain for the business, and that's why you've reached out. What was the catalyst? Why did you reach out to me? And typically that is the answer. We're losing customers, we're losing something, or, there's definitely pain there. So, and we have to, and until we feel that pain, it's sort of, the John Cotter's change management. The first step is this sense of urgency. And until we feel that pain and feel that sense of urgency, we're not going to be motivated to act, right?
And what do you define a pain point? Give me an example of a pain point.
Exactly that, losing your customers. Why are we able to bring in 100,000 customers every month, but we're losing 120, at the same time? So so that is a pain point.
Or what about along that same line? So bringing you in or losing them, or what about the lifetime value? Hey, they seem to stay for 2 months. And I would have thought it would have been 2 years. So, number one, these 2 points bring up the fact that you better know your numbers. You better have some analytics and some way to figure out these things, or else you're just flying blind.
Yeah, absolutely. No, great example. Great example.
So what do you feel that once a company goes, okay, I might have a couple little holes in that bucket, where's a good place to start? When you start engaging with a company, where's the first thing you're looking?
Yep. And so I love this question, and I love talking about this because I've got some great examples of clients who've reached out to me, and they seem to think they know what their pain point is. And I like to use this example. I had one CEO tell me, Annette, our problem is really communication. We don't communicate very well with our customers. And I'm like, all right, let me start with my process. And typically when I first engage with a client, I will do interviews with the executive team, interviews with a sampling of employees, and interviews with some customers. Because I want to hear it straight from everybody's mouth, right? I want to hear what the current situation is from a few different constituents. So in this particular example, I came back and, completed all that work and came back with a 60-page report. Now, I said to the guy that I was working with, I said, do you want me to share the 60-page report with the CEO? And he's like, oh, yeah, he needs to see the whole thing. Wow. And it was all about, and it was not just communication, right? It was about the leadership team not being aligned, and the culture being a mess, the employee experience being a mess, and all of those things ultimately led to a bad customer experience because the customers were telling me they could see and feel all that stuff that was happening inside the organization, as they were interacting with the organization. So that's where I began. I want to get a baseline. I want to just get level set on what the situation really is, and then we can develop a strategy and a roadmap from there.
And it's interesting that you gave that example where they said, yes, give the whole thing to the CEO, because you want them to actually take the blinders off and realize that there are issues, or the better way to say it is opportunities, because otherwise they just think that they're just doing just fine. And like in sales, you'll get trained, find that pain point and then have them wallow in it. Just go deeper and deeper and deeper. And you don't want to be unkind, but you need to be able to say, tell me a little bit about this, and let's talk about that pain point so that they can go, okay, enough. What do we do? We're all yours.
Yeah. And you know what, sadly, this happens a lot. This particular scenario, and it might not just be this one thing that, we feel like our communication is broken or whatever, but a lot of times they'll come to me and they'll say, I know what the problem is, but you don't really. You're kind of looking at it from, the business perspective, and what we say, we call it inside out perspective. And customer experience is very much outside in. It's very much about listening to your customers and bringing the customer voice into everything you do. But to sit there and say, oh, we know what our problems are, and then to have someone like me go in and say, okay, well, there's a lot more going on here than you even realize. And a lot of times we see that with the executives, is that they're so high level, meaning far away from the things that are actually going wrong. And the employees are afraid to tell their leadership team what's going on. There's this fear of recourse, or there's fear of nobody's going to listen to me, or they don't care. If they cared, they would have already done something about it, those kinds of things. So it can really be an eye-opening exercise for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So what does the typical engagement look like when someone does realize it and then reaches out and then says, okay, now what? What does that really look like when you start working with a client?
Yeah, so one of the things after we've gone through that, report of my assessment and everything is really the assessment is going to drive it. And the one thing that I would say is that no two client engagements of mine look alike, right? I sort of have this approach or framework that I work within, but whatever we learn in those interviews is really going to drive where we go next. Most of the time, it starts with leadership alignment and getting that group to be a team, not just a group of people who are sitting in a room together. And then also the culture, like revisiting the core values, making sure that they actually have core values, because some of them don't even have that, and that they're being socialized and operationalized. And then the other thing that we'll do pretty much right away is set up a governance structure. And it's really sort of the operating model for the strategy. So the governance structure has two parts to it. It's got, the people. Who are the people and the teams that are going to, basically do the work and help to get that grassroots groundswell that we need within the organization to make this transformation happen, because it doesn't happen just, by the chief customer officer or the customer experience team or the CEO alone, right? It's got to come from a grassroots groundswell there. So we'll spend time on that. And then the second part of the governance structure or the operating model is all about data and the technology and the infrastructure and how we're gonna act on what we learn from our customers and from our employees. Who's going to follow up? Where is the data? How do we bring it all together? And it's not just surveys and feedback. It's also all the data that we have within our organization. And there's tons of data that's being captured day in and day out. So we've got to be able to bring that together and figure out how we're going to use that. So that's typically where we start, is making sure the leadership team is aligned. The culture, making sure that the culture is where it needs to be. And if not, then we need to lay out a plan for how we're going to, for lack of a better word, fix it. But, we're going to have to transform it. And then that governance structure and operating model.
So what do you do when you have someone or an organization that goes, love it, let's go, and then there's not buy-in from 100% buy-in, where they logically go, yeah, we need to do it, but then they're not really responsive to what you're needing to do, and it kind of stalls what you need to accomplish for them, and it's like, I can see the end, you must do these things so that you can succeed, and they're like, yeah, we'll get to it, and you're like, what? Right now? So how do you get them to have that, sense of urgency?
Yeah, this happens quite frequently. I don't even have a good name or a label for it, but they start to lose interest in it because things aren't happening, or they're not happening fast enough. And I think the important thing that people have to know is any kind of transformation, culture transformation, business, whatever it is, it's going to take 3 to 5 years for this to be your new norm, right? Yeah. For you to bring the customer into the voice and the feedback and the data, and to use that day in and day out and just have this customer-centric approach. It takes time for that to become your new DNA. And so people get bored with it. They do, because they're like, well, I'm not seeing change fast enough or whatever. And that's part of the problem with some of the customer experience work that we do, because some of this stuff takes months. It might take 18 months before, if you're doing like a major technology, rip and replace or whatever it is. So in order to keep people invigorated and keep them excited about, we've got to continuously do little baby projects and show quick wins and build the business case. But the quick wins and talking about it and keep communicating and keep showing those wins and showing that things are happening is what's going to keep people engaged and keep them committed throughout. Otherwise,
and setting the right expectation, because you could say, hey, see the situation that you're in right now. You laid it out. We're pointing at the documents. Did you get here overnight? Oh yeah, no, you didn't. The company's, 15 years. It may have taken you a decade or 8 years to get. Yeah. We're not going to get you out of it in 2 weekends. So I think that expectation is a big thing, and then the micro wins, the consistent mini wins, and it might seem like really trivial to say, "What? Yay, we achieved it." Celebrate it, because I think that does keep their attention. So that's a good point.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear so often, "Oh, this is just a flavor of the month." That's a favorite term, I think, within this profession. And it's like, no, it's not. and your job as the leader is to make sure that nobody ever views it that way. And so you've got to keep going. So, yeah.
Well, I love the title of your book, Customer Understanding, 3 Ways to Put the Customer in Customer Experience and at the Heart of Your Business. So if someone was interested in reaching out to you and picking up a copy of your book or looking to bring you in to speak, what's the best way that they can connect with you and your company?
Well, thank you for that. My website is cx-journey.com, and the book is available in both Kindle and paperback formats on Amazon, just on Amazon. So that's where they can pick up a copy of the book. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, Annette, thank you so much for coming on today. It was really great chatting about this, and talk to you soon.
Likewise. Thank you. Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.